All right. Well, I am so excited and honored to have Nir here on the show. I am such a huge fan. Chatting with my brother about you. Just honored that you would take the time to be a part of the Move Happy podcast. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, absolutely. For those that don't know your background, don't know what you're about, why don't you share your story with us,
Sure.
your origin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I am what you call a behavioral designer. So I help companies build the kind of products and services that help people form healthy habits in their lives. My first book was called Hooked: How to Build Habit Forming Products. And the book came out of a course I taught at the Stanford Graduate School of Business, as well as the design school there. And the premise of my work is around how can we take the psychology behind some of the world's stickiest products. So think about video games and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Slack, and all of these companies use the secret psychology of consumer behavior and design to make all sorts of things more habit forming. So companies like Fitbod have used my methodology to help people build a habit of exercising in the gym. Kahoot is the world's largest educational software. They use my
Hmm.
methodology to get kids hooked onto in-classroom learning. I've worked with companies like the New York Times to help people form a habit around reading the newspaper every day. So we can use this methodology for good. And then the other side of the equation is sometimes, however, products are designed to be so engaging that sometimes we overdo it. We get distracted
Hmm.
from one thing or another. So I really
Hmm.
specialize in helping people build healthy habits as well as
Hmm.
breaking those unhealthy bad habits.
Love it. Finding that balance. That's excellent. Excellent. One of the key pillars of Move Happy is about keeping a positive mindset, despite, the challenges that we all face in different industries. For those that might be in your similar field, or looking to join your industry, what are some tips that you could share with them that you've learned along the journey?
Yeah, so one thing that I was really surprising about my research is the importance of having a certain type of mindset, that we have
Hmm.
what's called a temperament. We have a self-image around what we're capable of. And what I discovered in my research is that many of us carry around these self-defeating ideas around what we're capable of. There's some fascinating research around this topic of what's called ego depletion. Ego depletion says that we run out of willpower. And this is a notion that a lot of people believe. You come home from work at the end of the day, and I'm feeling spent. I've got nothing left. I have no willpower left. Give me that Ben and Jerry's. I'm going to sit on the couch and enjoy this
Yeah.
ice cream. That concept actually did get some scientific credibility, but there were some studies that showed this was the case until, what we do in the scientific community, we replicate a study that sounds too good to be true. And it
Hmm.
turns out that when they tried to replicate this phenomenon of ego depletion, it couldn't replicate. That it turns out that it looks like ego depletion isn't real, that we don't run out of willpower like gas in a
Hmm.
gas tank, except
Hmm.
one group of people. There is one group of people who actually does exhibit ego depletion. This work was done by Carol Dweck at Stanford. She
Hmm.
found that the only people who really did exhibit ego depletion were people who believed that their willpower was a limited resource. That's
Hmm.
it. Everybody else didn't exhibit it. Only if you believed it was true, then it became true. And so this
Hmm.
is a great example of how our beliefs really do shape our behaviors. That if you
Yeah.
believe you are limited, if you believe that, oh, I'm a morning person, I couldn't possibly work at night, or I'm a night owl, and no way I could work out in the morning, or I'm a this, I'm a lazy, I'm a this, I'm a that. We have all of these labels that we use to define ourselves. And sometimes those labels can really help us. For example, if you label yourself, I am an athlete, I am a non-smoker, I am indistractable, per my book, that's the title of the book. Those kind of
Hmm.
monikers can be very helpful, but a lot of these monikers can be very hurtful. So we want to be
Hmm.
very careful about how we label ourselves, because our beliefs about who we are and our temperament really do affect our behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Great points. Thank you for that. Yeah, our language, our words are very powerful. So great examples. Thank you. Second pillar of Move Happy is about building strong community, really to protect our mindset as well as helping us move towards a happier life. What are some tips that you've learned along the way in building strong communities, whether it's in the tech world or, personal experiences?
Yeah. So, we are suffering through a loneliness epidemic in this country.
Hmm.
And this is not a new phenomenon. A lot of people think that, oh, it was social media that did it. That's not true. Actually, we see
Yeah.
this phenomenon of loneliness starting in the 1990s. Robert Putnam wrote a book called Bowling Alone in the 1990s that showed how people are less involved in these civic groups like bowling league, Kiwanis Club, church groups. We are less and less connected to each other because we don't interact with each other in these formal settings. And one of the things that we've lost, I think that the message here is that one of the things that makes these social interactions work, the reason that people used to get together at the bowling league or the church group, whatever, is because they always occur at the same time and place. And so that is something we have to bring back. When it comes to building community, you want to find the things in your life that are on the calendar week after week. I call this turning your values into time. So I should be able to look at your calendar for the week ahead and understand what your values are, not the game you talk, right? Not the values you espouse to have, but actually show me your calendar. And that's how I will show you what your values really are. So if friends are important to you, if relationships are important to you, which they should be, we know that it is one of the pillars of psychological health and well-being. You have to have people who know you and understand you and who you know and care about as well in return. So part of what I recommend people do is to turn your values into time by having those regularly scheduled interactions, even if it's going out to the pub on every Friday night or the bowling club or whatever it might be. Have those regular interactions to get together with the important people in your life and have that time on your calendar. Book it just like you would book an important meeting with someone in a business context, for example.
Love it. Great, great. Yeah, absolutely. Putting it on the calendar. Thank you for that. Lastly, the third pillar of Move Happy, of course, is movement related. It started in a psychiatric hospital when I was working there, and very, very low budget. I think we had like $10 a month to split for our patients. And then if they got discharged, it was like $50 a month for each patient. So very low budget. Wanted them to be able to, move and find enjoyment in movement because of the positive psychological benefits to it. So with that in mind, what are some of your favorite movements, whether it's sports, physical activities, dances that don't cost a lot of money?
Yeah. So I used to be clinically obese, and I remember when people would tell me that they enjoyed exercise, I would look at them like they were Martians. I had one of my friends would say, "Oh my God, I just got back from this 10K and I felt this runner's high." And I was like, "What are you talking about? Running is miserable. I have no clue what makes that fun." And so for the first time in my life now, for the past 3.5 years, it took me 5 years to write this book, but for the past 3.5 years, I've been using many of the methodologies in my own life. This is the first time in my life that I exercise regularly. And it's because I learned to enjoy it. It's no longer a drag. And what I learned is that, for the vast majority of us, we know what to do. Who doesn't know how to exercise, right? Like you could say maybe a few generations ago, "Oh, I don't know, show me." But today, who can't Google it? We all know what to do. It's kind of common sense. The question is not why, it's not what do I do? It's why don't I do what I know I should do? Right? Why do we get distracted from things we know we know how to do them, we know we should do them, and yet we don't do them? And so that really becomes the big question: is what gets us distraction? How do we overcome those distractions? And so I talk about many techniques in the book. It's primarily around digital distractions, indistractable. But there's a lot of parallels to physical health as well. Whether the distraction is that piece of chocolate cake you shouldn't have, or whether the distraction is let me just lay in bed as opposed to getting to the gym. So what we want to do is to use these various techniques that I described in the book to make sure we do whatever it is we say we're going to do. So for me, you asked, what do I do in my own life? So for the first time, I run regularly. I love running. Actually, I'm a barefoot runner, which is a little bit weird.
Wow.
I run without shoes. And I live in New York City, so many people think I'm crazy. It's wonderful because there's a lot of tactile feedback. I've never gotten injured, knock on wood. That's never, I've never gotten up. I love it because I learned one of the techniques I talk about in the book is about finding your intrinsic motivation. A lot of us have been told that the Mary Poppins technique. The Mary Poppins technique is put a spoonful of sugar on it and then it'll be good, right? If you give yourself a reward, I'll hit the gym. And then after the gym, what's at the exit of almost every single gym? A Jamba Juice, right? A fruit smoothie with 60 grams of sugar. Awesome. You did nothing. And so that mentality of let me reward myself, it's actually called moral licensing, that if I'm good in one area of my life, I can be bad in another area of my life. And this oftentimes backfires. It's why many times when people, train for a marathon, at the end of the training, they actually put on weight because they're hitting it so hard that they feel like, well, I can do whatever. and it ends up backfiring. So what you want to do is you don't want to layer on the extrinsic rewards. You want to find the pleasure in the behavior itself. And one of the techniques that I describe in the book is called MIA, minimal enjoyable action, MEA, minimal enjoyable action. So for me, I used to hate running. The way I started to enjoy it is I found my MIA. It started with, what do I find enjoyable about running? Well, at first it was nothing, but I did like walking. I always enjoyed walking. That was never a problem. So I said, look, I'm going to put that time on my calendar. I'm going to walk for 30 minutes a day. And in those 30 minutes, what I wanted to do was to feel, this sounds silly, this doesn't have to be what you do, but for me, I wanted to focus on something pleasurable about that experience. So for me, it was the wind in my hair. Okay, that was it. Silly. But for me, it was the wind in my hair. Now, once in a while, on one of these walks, I would say, you know what, let me try and run for 30 seconds. Okay, 30 seconds. Now, at the end of those 30 seconds, if it was not MIA, if it was not minimal enjoyable action, I went back to my minimal enjoyable action, which was to walk. Okay. And in those 30 seconds, the idea was to focus on the pleasurable sensation, to focus on the ground at my feet, to focus on the wind in my hair. So that 30 seconds, you know where the story ends, right? 30 seconds turned into 60 seconds, turned into 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Today, I can run 4 miles without stopping because I constantly focused on my MIA. So I am not a fan of no pain, no gain. I don't think that works for most people. What we need to do instead is to find the pleasure so that we can continue to do that behavior for the rest of our lives.
Love it. Love it. It's funny you mentioned that about finding the enjoyment, because that's actually the whole purpose when I first designed the program, was to get my patients to enjoy exercise and find a positive experience with it. Because I was told, I asked my manager there, can I create something for them? Because they were watching a DVD, a yoga DVD or a walking DVD every day for 16 weeks. And then it was the same DVD the next semester and following. And I was new there, and it just happened that I was like, I'm sorry, but I can do better than this. Can I please create them something? And she said, sure you can, but I don't think that they're just not into exercise. And I was like, yeah, no kidding. I mean, this is their experience with it.
Yeah, who would be?
So exactly. So that was the whole purpose, was to provide them a positive experience so that they would hopefully find some sort of intrinsic motivation to want to continue that journey. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what are you, I know you mentioned the book a couple of times, what are you really focused on, passionate, excited about that we can support you with here at Move Happy?
Yeah, I'm really trying to spread the gospel of this movement of helping people become indistractable, that I want this to be the new moniker, the new identity that we use to describe ourselves as the kind of person who lives with personal integrity, the kind of person whose time and intention they control, as opposed to letting their time, their attention, and their life be controlled by something or someone else. So that's really a movement I'm trying to propagate. And so that's what I'm focused on right now. I do a lot of speaking engagements and speak at several conferences. And so that's really the focus of my life right now. After spending 5 years on this book, it's changed my life, and I hope it'll help others as well. And if you're interested in my work, you can visit my website. It's nirandfar.com. Nir is spelled like my first name, N-I-R. So that's N-I-R andfar.com. And if you go to nirandfar.com, there's actually a complimentary 80-page workbook that you can download. It's totally free. If you do end up getting the book, make sure you check out indistractable.com. It's I-N, the word distract, A-B-L-E, indistractable.com. Make sure you keep your order number. If you get the book on Amazon or your local bookstore, doesn't matter. Keep the order number. If you enter it into indistractable.com, there's a special form for you to put that number in. You will get access to a complimentary video course that will start you on your path to becoming indistractable. It's a great compliment for the book.
Excellent, excellent. So everyone needs to go there and get your book and enter that code. Awesome. Thank you so much. And lastly, I always like to do a silly question just to kind of help the audience get to know you a little bit better on, a personal level. And I'm totally thinking of this on the fly. So knowing, you and your wife and your background, in the tech industry, what's something that, I know you're super busy and I don't know what your wife is into, but what's something that you guys absolutely love to do together that's not work related?
Oh, so, we live in Manhattan.
Okay.
And one of the reasons we moved here is because we love to walk. We got rid of our car. We don't have a car anymore. And when we moved to New York, we used to live in California. Now we lived here, and we got rid of our car. And that was a big draw for us. And it's actually a really good example of how your environment can really help shape your behavior. I mean, living in
Mm-hmm.
New York, or I would imagine any city, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you just walk, you move, you exercise out of just day-to-day life. You know, I have a
Yeah.
little watch that tracks my steps. And most days I'm doing 10,000 steps, just like living my life, just getting around. I
Mm-hmm.
don't have to plan special time to
Yeah.
exercise necessarily. It just happens. And that was really important to
Mm-hmm.
us. So whenever we have a date day, you know, we take a
Mm-hmm.
date day regularly. And so one of the things we like to do, we just walk around. We walk to Chinatown, get some good food.
Mm-hmm.
We, you know, walk here and there. And that's really one of
Mm-hmm.
the things. And we, of course, we talk and get to, you know, spend some quality time together.
I love it. That's great. Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for taking the time to be on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome.